Okay, I'd like to call the June 23rd meeting of the Government Study Committee to order. My name is Diana Cohen. I'm Vice Chair of the Government Study Committee. Chairwoman Karen Puyo will not be able to be with us tonight. So can we go around the room and everybody introduce themselves?
Bert Bushman, FinCom member.
Donald Lampron, citizen.
Bob Russia, citizen.
Paula Darby, citizen.
Bob Jackson, Selectman.
Charles Zaroulis, Town Council.
Matt Hanson, Assistant Town Administrator.
Thank you. Okay, so our only order of business tonight is to review the, how many of these are there? 5 sections, the draft created by Attorney Zaroulis, the 5 sections for the charter chapter that will deal with the Department of Public Works. So everybody had a chance to read this before, I'm assuming. Okay. Charles, is there anything you'd like to say to introduce this?
Not really. I simply looked in the town report to see what other departments might be involved, and I put those in. I hope I covered the ones that we should have. I may have had a question regarding a couple, I didn't bring the town report with me, but we do have unusual positions in the town that almost are an honor to people that specialize in lumber. The keeper of the bark and wood and so forth, I think usually it's Alan Sherbin.
Yes.
But I didn't put that in.
Didn't even know we had that position.
Oh, we do. Yeah, we have a couple of unusual appointments like that. But I put in what I thought probably should go into the umbrella of a Board of Public Works, and you people may have someone else, but I can't think of anything else.
The only thing I didn't see here was we had discussed whether the trash and recycling would become part of the,
I did
Department
not
of
put
Public
that in.
Works. Let's see, did anybody see anything else that they didn't see there?
No, but to that issue, we did talk a little bit about that, but that's still an ongoing issue in terms of the Board of Health and their relationship to the trash. And who's gonna be responsible for monitoring the contract with the actual
Yeah.
contractor versus oversight of trash collection in town. So, I don't think that issue's been resolved yet.
Right, okay.
What would be common practice in other communities?
It's not in, they don't have a department, because trash is usually contracted out, you don't have a department for waste. Usually it's either the Board of Public Works, Board of Selectmen, or the town manager that simply enters into a contract.
Mm-hmm.
The board, in the towns that have, in my view, the towns that have a town manager form of government, the Board of Health is not involved in that. In Chelmsford,
Both Westford and Chelmsford, it's really just the town manager's office.
yeah,
Westford, it's all the town manager's office, basically. In Chelmsford, they do have a part-time recycling coordinator who has now taken that on.
Right.
He then started to work really under the Public Works Department,
yeah.
as the recycling coordinator under Public Works, but that's a recent
Mhm.
change.
So it's really a management issue, not a management of the process. We don't do the
Right.
process.
So,
Right.
Or a lot of
yeah.
these are processes that we do. Would that not fall more under our government study committee outlining that, moving a piece like that under the town administrator guidelines? I mean, because really all it is a contract. We don't do anything else other than negotiate a contract, which he does, or that position does.
Well, there's the contract for trash and recycling, but there's also, people buying stickers, coming in and again, we've had issues with the hours being limited of that. There are issues of enforcement of the contract, which I don't think we've been able to do very well in this town because we don't have trucks on the road in our health department, in our Board of Health, which is why the discussion started about wouldn't it make more sense
Good point.
to have that all be managed under the Department of Public Works, because it has the trucks and.
So if it was in the Department of Public Works,
Mm-hmm.
then that would be still managed under the town administrator.
Right.
position, right? I mean, that's just a,
Right.
I mean, it's whether we park it here or
Where-
here.
Yeah.
Right.
I have no strong opinion one way or the other, except for, I think, keeping it in the Board of Health's purview is not the right place to park that.
Right.
Many of the issues, contract negotiation, when residents call up because something went wrong,
Right.
they call up the town administrator's office
Anyway,
anyways.
right.
To deal with it, they don't think to call the Board of Health
Right.
for something like that. And then it's simply moved back, so it's, I'm not sure why they were ever placed in that, but perhaps that's one of the things that could get unraveled, is that it gets parked in the appropriate place.
And you also have the billing of the extra trash toters that they send out, the $200 reminder
True.
that you owe us
Billing.
money for the
Yeah,
yearly
true,
renewal.
yeah.
That comes from the Board of Health.
Yep, and then I also know the Board of Health has to license any haulers that come into town.
Which is
but
separate
that's-
issue.
That's a separate issue. So obviously, there'd have to be a partnership between the Board of Health and the Department of Public Works.
I don't think it's all that complex.
Complicated.
For example, you talk about haulers, you have to remember that there are, let's say, 5 different haulers in the area.
Mhm.
They all got to get permission from the Board of Health,
Mhm.
but only one of them is contracted to pick up our stuff
Right.
here. There may be other haulers that are contracted separately to pick up commercial.
Right.
So you've got people going through the town, and you have private haulers picking up commercial stuff.
Right.
And then you have your own residential and so forth. So, in other towns, you are correct. All the complaints come to the town manager of the Board of Selectmen's office. Stickers and so forth are all purchased through there. People call.
Mhm.
If you want baskets or what have you, they're not at town hall. They're gonna be at the DPW building.
That's right.
They're not gonna be in the Board of Health's
That's right.
office. It's not gonna happen that way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very pragmatic. You're dealing with waste contracts. Who makes the contracts? It's your procurement officer or,
Right.
Who
town
signs the
manager.
contract? Does Board of Health currently sign the contract, or is that the town
Well,
administrator?
that's been, not to interrupt, you
No,
may have the
yeah.
answer, but I think there've been issues where they both signed it
They
because
both.
they both.
I was gonna say we both
Yeah,
did it.
Because the town meeting said to appropriate monies to be expended by the Board of
Board of-
Selectmen and the Board of
Oh,
Health.
okay.
Right.
So our last 2 contracts, the Board of Selectmen negotiated the contract, worked with the Board of Health,
Right.
with the recycling committee, et cetera, to craft a document, but we held public meetings as the Board of Selectmen, sometimes having the Board of Health there, or other groups there, with the prospective hauler, to try to hammer out a contract, and then voted on it as a group effort, and then signed it, but really, I mean, in all fairness, it was the town administrator, in a large part, that did the lion's share of the work in
And-
negotiations.
So it can be done by the town administrator without the Board of Health, but it really can't be done by the Board of Health without the town administrator. So that kind of tells you where.
Where it
really
should- where it
belongs.
should fall.
And the trend has been to
Right.
consortiums, where
Yes.
a lot of these
Towns.
towns are tied in with 4, 5, 6 different towns.
Yeah, which is what we
I
are.
think Tyngsborough is, right?
Tyngsborough is.
Yes, we are,
Yeah.
five towns,
That's
well,
what I
4
thought,
other
A few
towns.
others, yeah.
Yeah.
As far as contracts go, it's a sizable one,
Yeah.
multiple hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars a year, so
Yeah.
it needs to be taken very seriously. When
Yeah.
there's
I
an
agree.
issue,
I
comes to
agree.
renewal time and other things, the language is very important, that's in there.
So.
Board of Health goes up with stickers, like the special appliance pickups and couches and all that stuff.
They do, the library does. I don't know if Terry's involved with that now.
Terry
No.
does a lot.
Who gets the revenue?
Does she do them now?
She does them,
Yeah.
Who gets the revenue?
the town, just goes.
Well,
into
It
it
goes
goes
into
Town
the,
fund?
Yeah.
yeah.
It would probably go offset trash, I would think, somewhere, pick up or something,
Yeah.
however the books are done. I mean, again, if the DPW seems like a very good place for it to go, because it sounds like that still goes under the town administrator, manager, whatever that position is, that manage it, signs that. Doesn't mean the Board of Health doesn't get a say, or wouldn't get input
Right.
in
Right.
something like that, but it's really just managing or
Managing.
finding a
Managing
parking
it more,
spot
yeah.
where it sits logistically, when there's
Mhm.
problems, who takes care of the problems?
Right.
It's that office over there that takes care of the problems.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So DPW sounds like a reasonable place for it to sit.
So going back to the question, should we put down the trash
Yeah,
But
oversight?
the only thing that I would say is, that's a contractual situation. There are all kinds of different contracts. You have cable contracts and whatever. You don't all have them under your charter or your DPW. It goes without saying that if you have a DPW and the town appropriates X amount of dollars for trash pickup waste to be expended by the Board of Selectmen, it never says to be expended by the town manager. It's to be expended by the Board of Selectmen. The town manager runs the program, makes a contract, that's the end of it. Why do you need to complicate it by having a waste department put into the DPW? You're gonna have, just another name in there. But people make that decision, I wouldn't recommend it.
Back to the government study then, and parking it under plugging it into the town administrator. I mean, the town administrator / board of selectmen are almost synonymous in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So, it operates as a group, really.
Well, the only thing that I would say, Bob, in regard to that is you're going to have right now you have a town administrator, but you don't have a charter. I'm assuming you're talking about having a charter and a town administrator.
With plugging this into our charter that we're gonna hopefully get passed
Sure.
through, so I mean, that's kind of part and parcel. What I hear you saying is that don't put the DPW, or don't put the trash collection within the DPW purview.
Don't list it as a name, because
But it has to go somewhere.
it's gonna go in the budget, and it's gonna be expended by the Board of Selectmen. And the Board of Selectmen will have a town manager or town administrator. And the town administrator may tell the superintendent of public works, which will be under the town manager or town administrator, you handle X, Y, and Z. But the contract itself is gonna be by the town manager or town administrator. Once you have a charter, before the charter, the Board of Selectmen are gonna deal with it.
So where would the superintendent know, whoever it is?
but that's part of the job.
Is it gonna be in their job description, they're still gonna be responsible for calls from trash pickup? I mean,
Well,
it's gotta go somewhere to say who.
He can speak for Chelmsford, and I'll speak for Tewksbury, where they have the system in place. You have a superintendent of public works in Tewksbury, handles all the departments that we're talking about here. But if a complaint comes in regarding trash not being picked up, it goes to the town manager's office. The secretary there takes care of those complaints. It doesn't go to the secretary at the DPW.
Yeah, I'd say that's similar to Chelmsford and Westford, where I've had experience. Chelmsford now, they have that, like I said, a trash recycling part-time coordinator, so a lot of people will call the manager's office, but they just forward the call to him to handle. And he works with a contractor as well if they're missing streets frequently, and he can then report back to the board, but
And where does he work under?
he
Yeah,
does
that's
work
it.
under the Department of Public Works,
So
actually.
it's going to the Department of Public Works.
Same is true, but Billerica, Burlington, my two towns, all under Public Works, there was no
Yeah.
questions asked.
Right.
The trash was all under Public Works.
Yeah.
I'm doing the sub research right now for a Public Works director. One of the responsibilities is trash, sanitary
Exactly.
disposal, all that stuff, so.
Exactly.
But in all of these charters we talk about, you never see in the DPW a line that says waste management or waste.
We just have
Just-
a line item for trash disposal.
That's right.
Under the
$1 million,
DPW.
whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, you're saying because it's not, trash and recycling is not a board or a commission.
Yeah.
It's a responsibility
contract.
that currently lays under one board.
Mhm.
So it would be a different action to move the budget over to something else, to,
How is the budget,
to the DPW.
how is the budget passed now, Matt? Where is that line item
It's
for
under
trash?
Board of Health.
It's under Board
It's
of
under
Health.
Board of Health.
It's under
yeah.
Board of Health.
Okay, so.
That's what I'm saying, so it would be moving that line item.
Yeah.
have to move it.
But that's not done within this.
Not within here, no.
Okay.
So this is all clear now?
I don't know. Yeah,
No, I think your first observation is right. I think we turn it back. We haven't really consulted with the Board of Health. We talked to them, I think, once.
yes.
We really ought to talk that out.
E-
Yeah, a
If I
little
could,
bit.
even right now, when they have issues, they tend to come to our
I know.
office before they, unilaterally make those decisions. And, I don't know, depending on the size of this and how many employees they have in the highway department, if a lot of the calls are already coming to our office and the Board of Health, it might make more sense for those calls to keep coming here. They're going to two anyways, unless there's someone really dedicated in the highway department who wants to be managing the contract and those calls. I don't know if you thought about that. Some of these towns like Chelmsford, for example, is a much bigger DPW department and they have a dedicated person, but I don't think Tyngsborough's DPW is gonna have a
Right.
trash and recycling coordinator to handle it.
But that's, that eventually, to talk about what we're trying to get at, more efficiencies and those type of things, we need somebody managing that contract. And if you're getting 100 calls a week on trash, that contractor's gonna be called in and say, what
Oh,
the hell's
yeah.
going on? Why are we getting so many freaking calls?
Yeah.
Right.
But that's managing a contract.
Yeah,
And
Right.
the best place for that is,
here, right.
yeah,
I
to
agree,
me.
I agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly,
Right.
right.
And when we had gone to the Board of Health to talk about this, the discussion was, we had at that time assumed that it would be the support within the Department of Public Works, like the secretary there that would be taking the calls. And so we were saying that would offload, because I know there's always an issue with the Board of Health saying that they need more, paid time for their employees because, and this is what usually gets called out, it's the calls for trash. And so if it doesn't really belong there jurisdictionally, if it doesn't belong there, if it doesn't make sense, well then why would we be building up the staff here instead of building up the DPW to be able to respond to things?
Yeah.
Or your town manager.
Yeah, that's a decision that has to be made, and I think to that point about where it should ultimately go, if it gets to a point where they did have a secretary in the Department of Public Works who was having a lot of problems with the contractor and trying to resolve those issues, when it has to get escalated, it's gonna have to get
To
transferred
the
over to
manager,
this
who
office to
signs the
get
contract.
handled appropriately, so that's the only reason I would think might make sense to keep it in there originally, cause if it does ever have to get escalated to a point it's already in the office, but,
Okay,
But just jurisdictionally, if it gets parked under the town administrator right now,
right,
and in 3 or 5 years, 10 years from now, the DPW has a full-time staff person that can handle it,
Right.
it can simply get shuffled over that.
Oh, yeah,
Because all of that's
easily.
still under that purview of that
Yeah.
department, of the town manager's, administrator's position.
Yeah.
So it can get moved around. When it's parked under the Board of Health, it's
Right.
over here somewhere.
exactly,
And we're still taking care of it here.
That's what
So
I'm
it simply
saying.
needs to get moved.
Yes.
So I think that's really the government study,
right.
probably not this, that moves it. And then as you guys had described the various towns, they just simply manage it. It
Okay.
doesn't require a document to say how you manage it. They
Right.
just simply manage it and say, you're in charge of that,
Right.
you're in charge of that.
Yeah, that's
So we
right.
need to move it
Right,
Hi,
per the
Jack.
government study
right.
Jack?
and probably
Exactly.
not address it in this at all.
But this is part of the charter for government study, right? When you say government study, isn't that
Well,
us?
the larger government study document where we have people's responsibilities and what types of things fall underneath them. I think
Okay.
this is certainly a
Oh,
piece,
okay, I
a
see.
piece of it,
Yeah.
but I mean, that,
You mean the detail below the government study? where
right,
we
so
show
that,
the-
you know,
Okay.
that the town administrator is responsible for the, trash and recycling pickup contracts, et cetera, within the town of Tyngsborough.
Mhm.
Something along those lines, probably you can all say much better than I can, you
Mhm.
put a period at the end of that sentence,
Okay,
then they can move it wherever they need to move it over the years, depending on the availability of services.
okay, yeah, and it doesn't need to be in the charter itself,
Because we don't actually provide the service.
okay. Okay, all right.
Miss Jackie.
Okay. So everybody sees clearly in this draft then that the Department of Public Works is the Board of Selectmen, right? That's what this is saying.
Yes. A question on that, Charles, in 3. Bob, don't take this the wrong way.
That's
How is
probably a
this-
question I was gonna ask
How
anyway,
is all
so.
of this gonna reconcile with what we're trying to do in terms of appointing powers for the
Yeah.
town administrator where this here says that the selectmen, and apparently the selectmen alone, shall be the appointing authority for the superintendent.
This is the way I see it happening. You look at this document as to how you want a Board of Public Works or a Department of Public Works. Ultimately, when we go, keep in mind what I had said before, that my view, and I'm not sure the committee agrees with me on this, but I expressed the view before, that I would prefer, my recommendation would be to get the town meeting to approve a Department of Public Works, a Board of Public Works first. We talked about the fact that you'll have difficulty getting this passed unless you're able to convince, say, the Sewer Commission, that the time has come for them to relinquish, for the sake of efficiency and autonomy, their powers and delegate that to the Board of Public Works. Now, that's what normally happens as the first step, you get this thing passed. The second step is that when you have a charter with a town administrator or manager, the town manager usually is the Department of Public Works, the Board of Public Works, I should say. All of the authority, the road commissioners, these other departments are just taken over by the town manager. They no longer exist. So this is just to give you an idea, if you were to go for a special act to make the first shift, this is what you would do. And then when you have the charter has a line in there that all of the duties and responsibilities and so forth of the Board of Public Works now are under the authority of the town manager. So it's just like one sentence eliminates this whole thing. If you don't want to go through that process, then we will draft the charter to provide that the charter is going to provide that all of these departments are going to be eliminated, and the town manager is going to be in charge of a Department of Public Works. And eliminate the Board of Public Works as the interim
Oh.
thing. Do you follow me?
Yeah, now I do.
Okay, yeah.
That's not how I
That
do
makes
it.
it clear, yeah.
Yeah.
So this was never meant to be part of the charter, this was a separate special act?
This was because we had talked before about getting you a copy of a special act for a DPW,
Oh.
and that's what I did.
Oh,
But you make the decision now, you wanna go directly into the charter, or do you wanna go through this process first? Either way, I can deal with it, once you make that decision. We had the discussion once before, and my memory is that the consensus was, we don't wanna do this
Yeah.
first, okay? So we'll fold this in
Okay.
to the charter if
that's why I
what
was
it-
confused, okay.
But keep in
Yeah.
mind that I really do believe that this might be the best way to go, but it's not for me to say.
Okay.
So-
Oh, okay.
So what would be the advantage to doing it, so this would be first.
Yeah.
What would be the advantage of doing this first, followed by the charter? Cause I would think the
A
timeline.
year later?
Did you say a year later?
Yeah.
Cause I thought the timeline was gonna be much
Right.
more compressed than that.
Well, I think what I'm trying to say, Bob, is that if you can't get this passed at a town meeting, you may have difficulty getting a charter passed with this in it at the next town meeting.
Yeah, but I see two different things. This one puts the Board of Selectmen, replaces all these commissions with the Board of Selectmen, which I think we think there'll be more resistance.
Which is contrary to the
Well,
other document.
Contrary to that what our goal is, which is to, place it under the town administrator,
And who appoints that person?
the Board of Selectmen.
And so
Well,
who has
yeah.
the power? still comes down to the same thing essentially. But anyways, that's for you people to decide. To me, it's a question of politics, and as I said earlier, that some of these departments here, like the sewer commission, you're gonna have to sit down and come to an agreement with them, I think, or an understanding. Because you don't want them to fight you at town meeting
No,
on
I
this.
agree.
And once you come to that, you know, I think that's I think that's half the battle in regard to this issue.
Right, it's for
is
the
the
first
sewer-
battle,
the
to
sewer-
get through
yeah,
it.
the sewer commission.
So it's interesting with that. I would say that I almost saw this as a carrot within the other document, that because the other document contained this, that this was a value add to pass the other document. If-
Yeah, I wasn't looking at that way.
That's how I looked at this, but if it's of everyone's opinion that this should go as a separate document, I would think that the wording in this document should be consistent with the wording of the other document's proposal. And if, as a group, we believe that we're trying to consolidate under a single leadership of a town administrator manager,
Right.
then this document should reflect that also.
Sure, all right.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it in the charter language, okay?
Okay.
I'll try to work that in.
Do we want it to be in the charter, or do we wanna try to float it as a single document? But if it floats as a single document, I would say that it needs to be consistent with the language of that primary
Oh, yeah,
document.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just, I mean, 'cause
I don't disagree.
I would ask the question, if I voted on this and said, yes, the Board of Selectmen are in charge of this, and then a few months later, we came forward and said, now we wanna do all these other things, but we don't want them in charge of that
Well-
anymore, and say, well,
Right.
why did you do it in the first place? Why'd you sell it in the first place to do
The
that?
problem with that though, Bob, is if you're going to have a DPW which is separate from a charter, no charter, you've got to have a board in charge. You could have a Board of Public Works, which is elected separately from the selectmen. But the tendency has been in municipal government that when you have a Board of Public Works, it's the Board of Selectmen. Some towns did have a separate Board of Public Works, but what was it? You had a town where they had a Board of Road Commissioners, and you had a Board of Water Commissioners, and then later on you had a Board of Sewer Commissioners, all elected, and they were all doing their own thing, and they combined them into a Board of Public Works, which usually was the selectmen. But usually when you reach that particular point where you had boards of road commissioners, sewer commissioners, water commissioners, you had a town that was big enough to have a DPW and to have a strong town administrator or a town manager. I mean, that's what happened. So, do you want a Board of Public Works?
We used to have years ago, we had road commissioners, then we got rid of road commissioners, so.
Right.
What do you tell me the difference between a board of road commission and a board of public works? What's the difference?
There's no difference.
Right, so I mean, then we're going back to what we did 25 years ago.
Charlie, aren't the selectmen de facto the Board of Public Works?
They
I
are.
mean, they approve road that kind of stuff, right? I mean,
They are.
acceptance of, they're gonna have hearings and.
They are.
Okay.
They are.
So they already are that.
They are that. You had, I don't have the history here, but you had a board of highway surveyors,
Yeah.
which I think were folded into the Board of Selectmen at some particular point.
I can remember road commissioners,
Yeah.
that was the board.
I think in the nineties, they kind of.
But the
stopped
point is, in a
busting.
lot of towns, and that, I don't know what Chelmsford does, but in Burlington, when we had street opening permits, for instance,
Yep.
the selectmen would issue those, believe it or not.
Yeah.
As public works commissioners,
Oh, wow.
Because-
on the recommendation of the highway, superintendent of public
Because
works.
under the state law,
Yeah,
if you didn't have road commissioners, the selectmen were the road commissioners.
yeah,
And if you didn't have sewer commissioners,
yeah,
the selectmen were.
correct,
So some
Yeah.
towns already had it built
They
in
already have
because
it
they
built
never
in,
had
yeah.
road commissioners.
okay.
So I can tell you, I mean, what Chelmsford does anyways, the only thing selectmen are still in charge of for roads is opening or closing them and, putting up new signage. We're still technically, technically in charge of that, but other than that, the town manager actually has the authority to hire and fire DPW director, who then has
Right.
the rest of the authority over roads. He spends the chapter 90 funds.
Yep.
He does everything else to take care of the road, so it doesn't have to come in front of the selectmen. They still have that technical authority to close a road and things like that, but it's
Yep.
very, very limited.
Yep, okay. So that, to me, that's a practice that just evolves over time,
Yes.
right? I mean, I know the selectmen I had in Burlington never wanted to do that stuff. It just, it just kept going before them and they did it and,
Yeah.
you know, we did, the superintendent of public works, they never went against the superintendent of public works. They come in and say, I think this makes sense, we're gonna have them repave it, let it rest a year and then repave it again and, okay, yeah, that's good.
But again, to Bob's point, we have to be consistent with our wording, because you know how it's gonna be, it's gonna be a catastrophe at town meeting.
Right, so what I'm hearing is that.
They'll go right up and just say,
Oh, there's
well,
no
why did
problem.
you
We're
offer
right
it this way first, and now you're telling me it's gonna be,
Yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing is from Charles, it sounds that if there has to be a board in charge of it, if it's a single standalone
Standalone, yeah.
entity. So I mean, there'd be a legal standing for that. I mean, probably the only caveat to that, the only piece that you could do with that is that you put wording to here that once the charter is approved, it's gonna fold into that. But then I would argue, why don't we just fold it in right at this point
You
anyways
can.
and just make it
Yes,
part
because this
I
is
think
the
it
first
makes
this
time,
document.
this is
Yeah.
the first time that I'm hearing that this would be something separate.
Yeah.
I think all along, we've been thinking this was part of the charter. This
sounds
was a
like that's
main
what-
thing
I
that
think
was
you're right,
being
but I
done.
think Charles is right. We asked them first to give us a special act for Public Works Department and what that looks like. And that was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
First started the process, but
Yeah.
since then, we've evolved.
We've evolved since then,
Yeah.
because I think we found that one-offing things might have been more confusing than,
This needs to be chapter 9.
So if you look,
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That's
if
what
you
I thought.
look at this here in regard to the structure right now, we're talking about the highway, road commissioners, which is right now the selectmen.
Yep.
We're talking about recreation and park, which is,
Recreation and Parks
That's-
Department.
but that's under
But
selectmen.
that's under the selectmen. Yep.
Well, you appoint, I think, right?
Yep.
Then the answer is yes.
They're not elected. You have sewer commissioners who are elected.
Yep,
right?
You have a cemetery commissioners which,
who are elected.
No one.
who are
Elected.
They're
Well,
usually,
rarely elected.
they end up being
Really?
appointed, right?
Yeah.
They end up being appointed
You have
because,
a tree warden, which is an employee essentially,
Yeah.
and probably would be delighted to be listed as an employee.
right.
So, when you look at
really
this,
just
your
the sewer
structure is
commission.
there already, except for one, and I
I agree.
emphasize that there, so, yeah, you have it
Yes.
already essentially.
Yep. And we've had discussions with
With
the
the
sewer
sewer,
commission.
yeah, with Jeff and some of, yeah.
Yep,
So just as a what if we go forward with this, the sewer commission says, we're not going along with this, the residents won't support them being part of it, does it make sense just to push forward anyways? And have a DPW without sewer? Or are they really the big?
I thought that they've been pretty
They were
supportive in our
pretty
meetings.
supportive.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Oh, but
I'm
it
just
could
throwing it
happen.
out there, because
Devil's advocate.
it's, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
if they don't wanna be part of it, because the residents might pull it out too, they might say, you know what, we want separate, sewer commission. They could override.
I say we keep going if we get to that point.
My recommendation would be that if you get that resistance and it's obvious, that you simply delete them and you proceed
Go
with the.
Yeah.
Do it with that,
I agree.
right?
I agree.
Good.
Okay,
No question in my mind about
Yep.
that.
okay.
So now this is chapter 9.
But it's, I think
No.
it's be different because we're not, are we still doing it
Charlie's
this way?
gotta look at it, he's
No,
gonna
no,
incorporate it.
He's
I
gonna
just have
fold
to,
it in.
you just have to adopt it,
Okay.
adapt it to the
Yeah.
charter language.
Okay,
To the
charter
language
language,
that
yeah.
makes it fit.
Yep.
But I think the purpose of this, because this happened very quickly, you
Yep.
know, and is to get your sense as to, these are the departments you want included.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
And we'll put that in and just have the language that will be part of the town manager form of government rather than a board
Right,
of selectmen, board of public works.
put it within the charter,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, deep down, Charles, when you say to me, this is the way I think it should go, I'm with you. But is it the way we're gonna do it at town meeting? That's the whole other thing. If we're
Well-
trying to get something through, sometimes the right way ain't the way to do it.
I have-
Just the right way, period. without the period.
You've been involved too long.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
Too
you
much
why,
experience.
I'll tell you why I had suggested that. And maybe Bob Jackson might remember, Jackie, I think, may remember. The town meeting actually voted one time for the selectmen to come back with a Board of Public Works. They had a vote at town meeting and they told them to come back next year, and the selectmen never came, no one did anything. It was a missed opportunity.
When was that?
Yeah.
About 8, 9 years ago.
Matt, you might wanna
10
research
years
that,
ago.
so we take a look at that and see what that.
The
Yeah.
town meeting actually voted to do that.
So we can reference that vote and say, here we are.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
A little late.
It took a little while, but hey, you asked to see, I
As you
know.
all
So-
remember.
Yeah.
So that was
Little
part
dust
of my
off the nose.
rationale, that there was this mandate at one time, that unfortunately just wasn't followed.
I don't remember this at all.
Because I don't remember, and I've been off the board since 2009.
Okay, so
We're
we'll all put
Tyngsborough,
up.
not Tewksbury, right?
We're all gonna put up $20, and I will match it, because I remember seeing it, and I remember bringing it to the attention
Wow.
of the Board of Selectmen, and I said, what happened here? And they said they just forgot about it. There was a missed opportunity at that time. It could have happened several
Send
years
us
ago.
back some correspondence on that once you dig it
Yeah,
up.
if I can, whatever I can
Yeah,
find,
if you can find something.
send it
Thank
over to
you.
the committee.
Oh, great, thank you. Interesting. Okay. Anything,
Now, I did, by the way, I explained to Karen, I think to Kurt, I've had a very bad schedule the past week, so I got the notification of this. I had made a lot of corrections to the prior document that we had.
Mhm.
And I wasn't able to get it into a written document for you because I've
Right.
been way overextended.
so we'll do that at the next meeting, if that's
Mhm, yeah.
possible? We'll wait to have our next meeting till that's ready.
Okay.
So that amended document that Charles just talked about will include now the changes?
Yes, it will.
Yes,
Okay.
so now it'll include that.
So that'll be.
As part of the charter.
When do you think would be an appropriate time for us to try to have another
Let,
meeting?
let me just see what happens this week or so, okay?
Okay.
Because I do have a lot of litigation. And
Okay.
I'm coming up in the summer months where
Yeah.
I'm gonna be away for 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to.
Now,
You
can,
know, I don't have any discretionary time. In other words, the court is telling me I have to do these things.
okay. All right, so, can we use a couple of minutes then to clarify? I think you're working on the next version of the charter.
Yep.
Karen was saying you're also working on cleaning up the bylaws?
No,
Oh, okay.
I haven't even looked at them.
Oh, okay. She
Am
was
I
saying
supposed
that.
to?
I don't, that's what she said to me,
I
but
think-
maybe not.
Yeah, I think if I were to put it in perspective, that after we get through deleting a lot of the bylaw provisions that exist right now that have been incorporated in the charter
Right.
as being unnecessary, and we get that out of the way, then we look at the bylaws afterwards.
That
They already
seems
Clean
exist.
them up at that point.
And then clean it up, that's not the important thing, because they are there.
Okay. Because I think we were saying we kind of have to have them both now
No,
together,
you don't.
right?
Charles,
No, you
does-
don't.
Does
We don't.
the
No.
charter will supersede what's in the bylaws, right? So
It
if something is in
Yes,
contrast,
it will supersede it, yeah.
Supersedes it.
okay.
So, as part of that discussion though, I know there's a lot that you say that's in the charter and probably even in the bylaws that we don't need to specify because it's better to point to Mass General Law, because,
That's a separate issue. In other
right, this
words-
is a separate issue.
Yeah, in other
Right.
words, in my view, there's no need to incorporate what should be a bylaw that already exists in the charter,
Okay.
because it's a bylaw that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
May need to be, the language may need to be cleaned up, or things like that. But also, I'm always opposed to paraphrasing or repeating the language of a general law in a charter. It's not
Right.
necessary. General laws supersede anyway, and just maybe a reference to the general law is all that's necessary. gonna have to use the language and
And
repeat it.
things can change within
Yeah.
the general law, so it'll be modified, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So to that point, part of what we've discussed is the need, I mean, we want this charter and the bylaw, and maybe it's another document together to help residents understand how things get done and should get done. And so when we just say we don't have to talk about it because it's in bylaw, we're still leaving the residents confused about how things should be getting done. So is it a fact document? Do we say which bylaw?
I
What do
would
we
not.
do? How do we,
I
how do
would
we
not.
help the residents to understand, the stuff that we don't have in there, because we're following Mass General Law for those items? So I think we all do agree that we don't wanna put in stuff, we don't wanna paraphrase Mass General Law within the charter and within the bylaws. But I still think we did wanna make sure that people understood how things get done.
I agree with that. I think that if there was some sort of cheat sheet almost,
Right.
like, you know, like, number one, and there's some sort of note that this would refer to Mass General Law 41 Section C, and then if you wanted more
Exactly.
details, you could look that up yourself, but at least you would know where to go.
Exactly.
I think that's.
Right. I pulled the first thing out that I
Yeah.
came across.
Okay,
Which was the legislative branch town meeting, and under that was finance committee. And we know that under the general laws, it states, I don't have it in front of me here, that there shall be a finance committee consisting of, I think, 5 people or something, number like that, who shall not be compensated, whatever it may be, what have you, and that's there. Now, we in the town adopted, as part of the bylaws, a finance committee. And we said it's gonna be 5 citizens appointed by the town moderator, being elected, whatever it may be. It spells it out in our bylaw. Now,
in our charter.
no, in our bylaw.
Oh, in our bylaw.
It says
Okay.
how it's gonna be,
Yeah.
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
And we're governed by that, and has some other language about holding other positions and so
Yeah.
forth
Mhm.
there. And it's all spelled out in the general laws and in our bylaw. Now, maybe the bylaw needs some changes, maybe, but the town meeting has already approved it. So my view is, to try to address your question, there's no need to even have a reference in the charter for a finance committee,
Because it's in the,
because it's there and the general laws require it. Now, you could, when you're debating the issue, if someone says, what about finance committees, it's not in here, you should be prepared to say, well, it's not necessary, because if you look at the general laws and our bylaws, it's there.
It's
What
in the
more-
bylaws.
Yeah, what do you need,
Yeah.
what do you need further than that? Because you don't wanna put it in this document, oh, go see town bylaw regarding finance committees. I think that's just clutter.
But I think that and I think maybe this is where it came up, where we're looking at the bylaw at the same time, because there was some changes that we discussed with the finance committee
Yeah, there were.
that are not in our current bylaw, so if we were gonna do it that way, we would probably have to do a bylaw change at the same
Yes.
time.
And as I said, I think, Jackie, also, that once you have something in this document, you wanna change it, you go back to legislature. If you have a bylaw, you just go back to town meeting. And, you know, like, I've deleted the annual town meeting, I've deleted the special town meeting, it's all provided either in bylaw or by statute. It's not necessary in here. So if you wanna change your town meeting days, just go to town meeting and do it. Why go back to legislature? It's not necessary. My view of the charter is to provide for the administration of the town rather than the legislative aspect about bylaws and town meeting and so forth, which is your legislative branch. You want a document that provides for the management and administration of the town.
But again, then we should be looking at our bylaws at the same
Yes.
time and going to town meeting with both documents at the same time,
I,
correct?
you may do that, but I'm not recommending it. I think that's gonna make for enormous confusion. I would rather see that the first thing that they vote upon would be the charter for management of the town, and then you take separately, maybe over a series of town meetings, you have your priorities. This is what, you know, what other towns do is, which we're not doing right now, because they're focusing on the charter. When you get through with the charter, you ought to have a bylaw study
Oh,
committee.
big time.
And go right through it, you know, each one and see, this is problematic, this needs some language change and so forth, and then develop, it. Now, I can tell you, we spent a lot of time in Tyngsborough, and I was ex officio with the committee, I met with them a lot. They did a lot of hard work with trying to streamline town meeting, government and so forth. And not the management, not the charter, but all these other things. And they came out with a long list of things with changes, and they went to town meeting. It was so badly defeated, because people didn't wanna deal with it all at one time. They're willing to deal with one or two bylaws, but they're not willing to look at all the town bylaws and deal with it at one meeting. They just won't do it. Maybe they should, but they won't.
So Charles, just so that I'm clear, when our charter passes at town meeting, and it's passed through our legislative branch, something in that document that is in conflict with our existing bylaws, our charter will trump.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
So,
But there should be very little conflict.
I'm just saying, if there
If there
was,
is, right.
that's the document, so it's gonna be state law, it's gonna be charter, then bylaws,
That's-
hearsay.
Okay.
Committee policy.
To be continued.
Yeah, that
All
makes
right.
sense. Okay. Okay, and maybe it's a different document that's created by the government study committee or somebody on how the town operates. That's not a legal document, but is more explaining to the
terms.
people that it's a combination of, like what you just said, state law, charter, bylaws, and how they work together, and they fill in the gaps from each other, basically.
I think being prepared to answer the questions as they come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not being able to anticipate what questions are coming up, we certainly can't write it into a document.
Right.
But we should be versed on what it is, and if no one asks the question, then there's probably no point in trying to address it, to say that this isn't a bylaw, this isn't a state law, this is here, this is
Yeah.
there.
Right.
Because we're focused on a charter
Yeah.
to do everything that a charter does and move
Yeah.
that forward.
Yeah, the confusion aspects, I agree with Charlie, I think the confusion aspect really sets us up for failure, I think, if we give people too much stuff. Look, I've been a resident here for a number of years, we've all been residents. Has anybody read through the bylaws of the town? People don't even know we have them, for the most part. Some people do, but only those people that are engaged. The
Right.
majority of people, what are the bylaws? I don't even know what they are. And why are you telling me you wanna pass this, which contradicts our bylaws, and now you're giving me this big document, which we have to, I don't even know what you're talking about.
I like to read
It
a lot
goes
of
down.
stuff, so I.
Yeah, I know you like to read it, but the majority of people don't know. They just don't.
I have an example. And then again, this goes to town Tyngsborough. I won't go into the specific part of the bylaw. It's a very intricate bylaw, very specialized type bylaw. Went into effect in 2002. Has never been used
Yeah.
in any way whatsoever.
Not a surprise.
Nobody knew anything. There it is. Nobody ever used it. It provided for revenue for the town. Town never charged 50 cents, never collected a penny, never implemented it. Nobody knew anything about it. And I got a telephone call. I said, I didn't draft it. I'm not, would not have been in favor of it. I can tell you, and since 2002, this issue has never come up in any way whatsoever. Nobody knew about it.
Good old
One
place.
citizen, I think,
Yeah.
read it, and yet they adopted it.
Right. That happens, it just
And
happens.
the town manager's article.
Yeah.
It's like the driver's
He
license.
never used it after he got caught.
You never used it,
Rules.
yeah. So that's my point, Charlie, I agree with you, if we present two documents, as we're
Yeah,
talking
let's
about,
go
people are
get the
gonna say,
focus
what
off
am I
of what we
talking
have,
about?
yeah.
It's gonna be counterproductive, do it one step at a time.
I didn't even know we had a town beach bylaw,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, then they start reading through it.
It is described,
And then
it goes
next
into
3
great
hours
detail about
later.
what nudity
But
would
no,
be,
yeah,
what
4 years old
no, I've read
You
all
don't wanna
those
get
things.
into those
I've read up to
discussions.
4 years old.
The Board of Health is good with the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll happen.
yeah,
Okay,
motorboats, that's a good one.
but,
People in town reading that, what do you, I can't put my motorboat on, I never knew that on the Scopic.
Not by the town beach.
not by the town beach.
Yeah, so, I agree with you. So, but we need that discussion
Mhm.
as a committee.
Yeah, so we're prepared, because, yeah, I think, I agree with Charles, I mean, the focus has to be on our charter, you know, at town meeting. You know, and if it starts veering off, then we're gonna be losing votes.
Right,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
well, we look forward to
Okay,
your cleaned up version.
as soon as I
It's
can.
probably gonna be less than half the size it is now,
Half
right?
the size, yeah.
It's all our work.
No, that's a good thing, that's a good thing.
Okay, so we'll just communicate by email when,
For the meeting schedule, Diane, is that what you're thinking?
yeah, by
Okay.
email when, because we don't know when Charles will be ready,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
try to stick to Thursday
Okay.
night.
It's 7/14/21 and 28 on Thursday.
Seven.
Looking at the calendar,
Oh,
in July, got the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th.
My suspicion is that ain't happening in July.
yeah.
It's gonna be,
You said you got a schedule
Yeah.
coming up.
I think she's saying, do
Crazy.
we meet without Charles? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
we're not meeting
Okay,
until
perfect.
Charles is
Yeah.
ready, so
I
we'll do
can't
it by.
see August, we'll forget about it.
So you'll maybe know,
Hey.
let us
What?
know by the end of July.
What
if
did you
we
say
can
about
schedule one in August.
it's gonna happen.
Dawn, what'd you say about August?
You can't see August.
That,
You can't see
can't
August.
see
Oh,
August.
We'll be able to
I thought you
spend
said I
some
can't
time
see you
on
well in
this.
August. I'm like, what?
Alright, good.
Good.
Good. Charlie, thanks for that.
Okay,
thanks, Charlie.
for what it's worth.
Charles, you're the
no.
best.
I think this is great.
Okay.
You really clarified some things for me.
Okay, I just didn't know if you wanted to have any
I think
input.
it's
Yeah, Bill is
I think
actually
it's
one
a
of
good
our
idea
big
what
comments.
he's suggesting, is one step at a time.
Yeah,
I
okay,
mean, eliminate things that you can do later.
yeah. Yeah, we have to find the right balance between doing enough that
Meaningful.
it's meaningful and not too much that it gets confusing.
We need to create, we need the efficiency
Yeah.
in the town, we need that,
Yes,
Yeah.
no doubt about it.
okay.
We want you to come to town
Yeah.
meeting.
I will.
In fact, I think,
Oh, yeah,
we
July
may have an
I'll be there.
opening on
But- but
Well, don't we have an opening on
But
government
use the
study?
two E's,
Always open.
efficiency and economy. We're looking to save money.
Oh, that's good.
So should I,
Can I say free?
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Dawn, second. My gosh, by Bert. Summer mind here.
Okay, everyone, enjoy the 4th of July.
We're adjourned.
Have a
Good
safe
night,
one.
everybody.
Do we wanna vote on
You
it?
too.